Hello, sweet friend, and welcome back to Thankful Thriftiness. There are quite a few new faces around here since I last posted a long form video, so if you're new, pleased to meet you. My name is Marin. I'm a Christian wife, mama, and homemaker, and I live in the beautiful state of Michigan. Around here, I like to share creative ways we live within our means, some thrifty hacks, and just some fun micro homestead-ish living, all focusing on a heart of gratitude. And today we're talking about tallow. And this is the first in a series of 2 videos where I'm going to show you how to take raw beef fat, render your own tallow at home, and turn it into skincare products you love with normal everyday kitchen items you probably already own. Before we begin, if you enjoy this video and you'd like to see more like it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you are alerted whenever we have a new upload. Also, if you want to see some more daily living and thrifty little hacks, check out my Instagram linked in my bio. I'm going to read you a list of some of the benefits. This part isn't my forte. You may want to go find someone else's information if you're still on the fence on whether or not you want to use tallow, but here's a few I listed out just if you need a little extra convincing. It is rich in fatty acids, vitamin A, D, E, and K, antioxidants, offering benefits like deep hydration, barrier protection, and potential anti-aging benefits. For me personally, tallow has drastically reduced the number of regular breakouts I had, but the most noticeable difference for me is that it has made the stretch marks on my tummy almost completely disappear after having my son a little over a year ago. Now, of course, I can't promise it will do the same for you, but many people have experienced the benefits, myself included, and I can tell you your skin will feel so much healthier and happier using tallow. Right now, let's focus on taking raw beef fat, pretty much straight from the cow, and turning it into a white scentless disc of tallow that you can use in your skincare products. The first order of business is figuring out how you're going to source your raw beef tallow. If you or a friend has recently gotten a whole or half cow to put in your freezer, this is by far the easiest way to source your tallow because in general it's already included in the cost of the cow. If your friend doesn't feel like going through the process of rendering it all themselves, you may be able to get your hands on some of their beef fat by simply offering to do that part for them. I'm using fat from a cow my parents purchased earlier this year, but if that option's just not available to you, you should be able to source some from a local butcher for a fraction of the cost of completed, rendered beef tallow products. If you do get it from a butcher, ask them to pass it through the meat grinder before they give it to you to mince the fat up into smaller pieces, which makes the rendering process so much easier. But if you are using your own beef fat, I have a little hack I'll show you later that will still save you time in rendering. I did everything at home, so I began by chopping the fat into slices before adding it to my crock pot. Then I added just enough water to cover the fat, along with 3 tablespoons of salt to each 6 cups of water, along with a dash of baking soda. I wet render my tallow, so the salt and the baking soda are to draw the impurities out of the fat and into the water. I turned my crock pot to low and let it begin rendering. Once the fat was warm enough to be softer, I used my immersion blender to break it up more and help it render much quicker. This is where it gets a little tricky for me with the first render. I render mine until I can see that all the pieces of fat are fully dissolved into liquid, but I have to make sure it doesn't burn at that point. Thankfully, doing it in a crock pot, it makes it a lot harder for it to burn, but you still have to keep your eye on it because you want it to fully render, but you also don't want to burn it. Once my tallow was fully rendered, I poured it through a mesh strainer into a bowl to pull out any bits that aren't pure tallow or water. I placed my bowl, or in this case, pot of tallow and water outside or in the fridge to allow the tallow to firm up. The next morning, as you can see, the tallow was a nice firm cake, with the water swimming all around it, and I actually had a hard time getting it out of this container, so I had to break it up before I pulled it out. In an ideal world, it would come out in one perfect round cake, but when I used the pot, it just didn't do that. At this point, I was very confused. I did not know what this strange, sludgy mixture was on the bottom of my tallow cake. I'm assuming it's something that maybe emulsified with the water and the fat when I used my immersion blender, like some other part of the beef that was stuck in the fat. But either way, I just scraped off as much as I could before throwing the tallow back into the crock pot for our second render. It took me a few renderings to get all of this stuff out, but in the end, it all came out and we were left with nice, firm tallow. Once again, I added 6 cups of water to the beef tallow, as well as 3 tablespoons of salt and a dash of baking soda. And once again, I put the crock pot on low and let it render until the fat was fully melted. And once again, I put it through my fine mesh strainer, this time with a cheesecloth over top to catch any tiny particles the mesh strainer missed last time as I poured the tallow and water through. And this time I collected it in a bowl, which made the tallow much easier to remove the next morning. And as you can see, the tallow is looking much clearer than the day before, a little bit more pale, and definitely with a lot less particles in it. After being on the porch overnight, the tallow had solidified into a nice, firm cake with the water underneath. As you can see, there are some impurities on the bottom of the tallow cake, so I took a bench scraper and scraped off as much as I could and tried not to take away any of the nice, firm fat underneath. Our tallow is looking much cleaner now. The water and the salt is doing its work, but we still have a ways to go. So I busted up this cake of tallow once again, and you guessed it, tossed it back into the crock pot with 6 cups of water, 3 tablespoons of salt, and a dash of baking soda. And then once again, I let it render until the fat had completely melted. And then I also let it bubble for a little while to let the water pull out some more of those impurities. Look how much clearer this tallow is looking. Now look at how light the tallow is compared to yesterday and how much clearer the water is looking underneath. The next day the cake looked almost completely white, and the bottom of it only had the tiniest bit of sediment left. Now at this point, most people could be done with the wet rendering, but because of the whole goopy, strange stuff underneath, after the first render that seemed to still pop up during the next 2, I personally chose to wet render mine one more time just to be safe, because I didn't want my tallow end product to be contaminated with any water, and it seemed to work. After that third render, my tallow cake looked perfectly white, with only the tiniest bit of water and fat mixed together underneath. So I scraped off that last bit of grainy mess, chopped up my tallow, and tossed it back into the crock pot. But this time I didn't add any water, I just dry rendered it to get out any residual moisture. Then I did one final strain through my cheesecloth and mesh strainer. Look how clear it is. And then I let it sit out overnight to firm up. And here's the final product, a nice firm, clean disc of tallow that doesn't smell like beef. Because of the previous problems, I had this tiny bit of bubbly area on the bottom concern me, so I just scraped it off before using it to make anything. And that's it. The tallow is now ready to be used in either cooking or skincare products. One thing I want to make note of is just because it's clean and doesn't smell like beef, it doesn't mean that it lasts forever or that it's fully shelf stable. It will eventually start to smell a little bit beefy if you especially leave it out at room temperature. So what I like to do is I like to only make as much as I'll use for the next month or so, and then vacuum seal and freeze the rest. The vacuum sealing prevents any extra water getting in, but it's still a good idea once you do pull it out of the freezer to do a quick dry render before you use it in any skincare products, again, just to prevent water contamination, because water contamination equals mold and we don't want that on our skin. If you're looking for some really high quality but inexpensive vacuum sealer bags, I will link my favorite place down below and up above, as well as a coupon code to get you 10% off. Thank you so much for watching. I promise the hardest part is over now. Please come back next week and I'll show you how to turn this tallow cake into my favorite whipped tallow balm that my family and I use for literally everything. Have a lovely rest of your day and I'll talk to you next week. Bye! Obviously a dead cow that you put in your freezer. I have to sneeze. Oh, that's the worst feeling. Whew, I have a cold. Any cold remedies you have, please leave them down below, because